Hey everybody, welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. I want to apologize first and foremost for there not being podcasts for the last few weeks. And as you can tell from the background, I am once again recording the podcast from my job. So it's going to be like this for a little bit. My work schedule is going to be very hectic for the next couple months. So I apologize for that. So the podcast is going to go through a little bit of a change. Again, just for the next couple months. Once the summer kicks around, we'll go back to the usual kind of spiel and layout and stuff like that. So I'll still put the bumper at the beginning and at the end of the podcast. But for the most part, there won't be any real soundbite transitions. At least probably not. If I can fit it in there, then I will. You also won't get any of the trailers played in the podcast anymore. Just because, recording this, editing it as much as I can, and going home and then, uploading everything. I'm also going through a laptop change at the moment. So I'm moving a bunch of stuff from one laptop to the other laptop. And it's taking a little longer than I thought it would. So for the next couple months, the podcast is going to be a little different. I'm still planning on releasing podcasts. I don't want to take a break from it because I don't want to get all that momentum back that I've gotten and then start losing it bit by bit. I don't want to do that. So the podcast will be going through a bit of a change for the next couple months, but it's still going to be the same old podcast that we've been doing, that I've been putting out and stuff like that. Just, a little bit of changes here and there. Also next week, there will most likely not be a podcast. I am getting some dental work done, and it's also my sister's birthday. So I don't know if I'll be doing anything. We'll be doing anything special that particular day or that day before. So I just want to warn you guys ahead of time. There may or may not be a podcast next week. But if there is, obviously, there is that. And again, I want to apologize for there being no podcast for the last couple weeks. Just again, the work schedule's kind of been getting to me, so I apologize for that. All right, let's just move on to this week's podcast. Again, background noise. I'm recording this at my job, so I apologize for any of that. But let's just get to this week's podcast. We have a few quick trailers that dropped this week that we'll talk about very quickly. A Quiet Place 2 released a new trailer. It's a really short trailer. It's like a minute long. It's pretty much footage we've seen before. We have some new additional stuff, some extended stuff as well, some more monster action in there, which is pretty great. And like I said, nothing too new, but enough to whet our appetite for March 20th when it comes out. There was a new trailer for Rumble, or first trailer for Rumble. I know this played in front of Sonic, so if you went to go see Sonic the Hedgehog, you probably saw the trailer, but it's in a world where humans and monsters coexist, and the monsters put on wrestling matches for them. That's kind of like the big meal ticket for a lot of the monsters and a lot of entertainment, it looks like. The movie looks like it's going to follow one particular monster that I believe is voiced by Will Arnett, who ultimately is the underdog of the story as he trains to face off against the world champion, who I believe is voiced by Terry Crews. So that voice cast, like I mentioned, Will Arnett, Terry Crews, Tony Danza's in there as well, Ben Schwartz, and WWE superstars Roman Reigns and Becky Lynch are also in there. Rumble will open on January 29th, so you want to go check that out. Of next year, obviously, since we're in February already. So there's that. The next quick trailer is Saint Maud. This is a new movie by A24. They released a new trailer earlier this week as well. Coincidentally on Ash Wednesday, which I thought was very fitting. So it follows a hospice nurse named Maud, a devout young woman who believes that God is in her and works through her, and then she gets the chance to care for an ailing former dancer played by Jennifer L. And things don't go as planned. I'll just leave it at that. It's a pretty great trailer. A pretty great new trailer. It does also seem, it's kind of like A Quiet Place 2, where we've kind of already seen the footage, but it still works really well. There's just a little bit of new stuff in there as well. But it feels like it's going to be one of those movies where you're just not going to feel very comfortable watching it at all. But we'll talk more about Saint Maud once we get closer to the release date, which is very soon. Saint Maud opens on April 3rd. I believe A24 is giving this a limited run at first, and then as the weeks go by, it will be getting a wider release. But I believe April 3rd is actually the wide release for the movie. I'll double check that, but from what I was able to gather, that seems to be the wide release. And finally, the big trailer that came out this week, at least at the time of this recording. I'm going to try to get this out a little earlier during the day when I'm at work, which I know you're saying, why aren't you at work? I'm a substitute teacher, so I got some free time. But anyway, obviously, since I'm recording this at work. But anyway, the big trailer that came out this week is the first trailer for the new Candyman movie. The spiritual sequel to the 1992 horror film that starred Tony Todd as the famous Candyman. This new film follows a virtual artist named Anthony, played by Yaha Abdul Mateen II, and his girlfriend Tanaya Paris from the movie If Beale Street Could Talk, who live in present-day Cabrini, a now gentrified section of the town. He eventually learns the story of Candyman from one of the people that used to live in the old Cabrini Towers, and now lives in the new Cabrini. And opens the door to the spirit and takes over his sanity and unleashes a new wave of violence. The movie is produced by Jordan Peele and is directed by Nia Da Costa, and that opens on June 12th. I kind of really dug the trailer. I thought it was really good. It does feel like a spiritual sequel to Candyman. It almost feels like it's a direct sequel to the first one, so it kind of seems like they're ignoring, maybe, obviously it's just a trailer, but it kind of seems like maybe they're ignoring the first, or they're ignoring the sequel, so they're kind of doing like a Halloween situation where they're ignoring the sequels and just making this a direct sequel to the first one, at least from the looks of it. From the looks of the trailer anyway, who knows? We'll obviously have to wait and see until June 12th to see if that's the case. But the trailer's fine. It doesn't bug me. It's not something that I want to hit against the trailer. It's not like, oh, they did this and I'm not for the trailer anymore. They play Say My Name over the trailer, which I get it's a very tongue-in-cheek reference. I don't know, but it still kind of bugged me a little bit. It's not, it's a more slowed down kind of horror kind of sound, similar to what Jordan Peele did with I Got Five on It from Us, but I get the tongue-in-cheek reference. It also looks like maybe at least from the beginning, it looks like maybe Candyman won't be seen at all, even to us, the audience, during the attacks, which could be hit or miss. But again, it's still a trailer. I don't know how they're going to work that out. We do see Tony Todd in the trailer. I don't know if you're haven't seen the trailer or anything like that. I won't spoil it to where he is in case you yourself want to catch it, or that's already been spoiled for you. But we do see him in there. I didn't catch. I think I caught it on the first try, and I had to go back and watch that little bit. But I did notice that yes, that is Tony Todd. So he will be involved in the movie in some way. Virginia Madsen, who was in the first film, supposedly, at least maybe not her, but at least her character will be somewhat involved in this movie from early reports, or not very early reports, but early reports than when the trailer came out. I believe there's also someone else. I believe the person that Abdul Mateen is talking to early on in the trailer is someone from the first movie, or I think that's who it is. I think it was like maybe Virginia Madsen's friend or something like that. But I think someone else from the first movie is also appearing in that. And I think it was her. I didn't look that up before I started recording, so I apologize for that. But execution is key, obviously, in stuff like this. And I think that just from what we've seen so far, trailer-wise, it looks like they're going to do it. Again, Jordan Peele is only a producer on the movie. He's not a director. Nia Da Costa directed a movie called Little Woods, which I have not seen, but I heard some pretty good things about it. So this is a big leap, and I think maybe she'll pull it off with this. And it looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it looks like a good spiritual sequel, like it's been labeled as. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but I'm looking forward to it. All right, so those are your trailers for the week. If something pops up, I don't have the luxury of editing as much as I used to, so I'll probably just pop it in a little bit later. So let's move on to the quickfire movie news items of the week. The first one is the title for Jurassic World 3 looks to have been revealed through director Colin Trevorrow on social media. Trevorrow sent out a picture from the set as filming began this week, which is pretty exciting. The title looks to be Jurassic World Dominion, which is pretty fitting considering the connotation between the idea of the movie, of what the movie will probably try to invoke and the meaning of Dominion. Either way, Jurassic World Dominion, as it's called right now, will come out next year on June 11th. So that's pretty cool. Creed 3 is happening. I think there was reports saying that Creed 3 was going to happen. I think there was it's probably going to happen. Maybe it won't happen, but it is happening. At least in terms of behind the scenes features, because the writer of the upcoming King Richard film with Will Smith, which is based about Venus and Serena Williams' father, not the actual King Richard. Zach Baylin has been hired to write the script for the third Creed movie. There is currently no director attached to the movie, and Michael B. Jordan is expected to return. However, it is unclear when the third outing will go into production, especially since Jordan is a very busy man right now. So we'll have to keep an eye on production dates for that. Finally, the last quickfire movie news item is that No Time to Die, the runtime for the next James Bond film, has reportedly been revealed, and it was revealed through Regal Cinemas, and they revealed it as the largest Bond film to date at a whopping 2 hours and 43 minutes, nearly 3 hours of James Bond. Spectre had the title for the longest Bond film before that on 148 minutes. Obviously, this being the last go for Daniel Craig's James Bond, and everyone pretty much saying that this James Bond was going to be a game changer. I think you need time to really explore that idea. So 2 hours and 43 minutes of James Bond action, Daniel Craig's final outing in No Time to Die. Of course, the theme song was written and sung by Billie Eilish. That's already out. I have not listened to it. I was going to listen to it, and I decided, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to wait to see. I'm going to wait to hear it when it's playing in front of, the opening credits and stuff like that. And speaking of opening credits, I think it was last week it was announced that No Time to Die will have the longest opening credits scene in Bond history at like 20-something minutes, which is pretty impressive. And we'll see how that works out. But there you go. No Time to Die opens on April 10th. We'll definitely talk more about that once we get closer to the release date. All right, let's move on to the bigger movie news items of the week. First item of the week we're going to talk about is I usually don't report on stuff like this on the podcast because most of the time people probably don't care, but this one's a pretty big one. So on Tuesday of this week, Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, stepped down from his position, which he's held since 2005. Bob Chapek, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm probably not. Has taken over the role of CEO after serving as chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products. This is a big deal because Iger has been a part of the Disney family for a while. He was at ABC when Disney bought ABC back in 1999 actually, as I have written here on my notes. But he's been a part of it for a long time, and he was promoted to president of Walt Disney International when ABC came into the fold, and then he became president and CEO of Disney in 2000. So he's been running the ship for quite a while now, and Iger has done a lot for Disney. Putting aside how you feel about Disney and how they've been buying up everything and how they're basically leaving nothing to anyone else, he has done a lot for Disney. And to name, obviously, a few movie-related things, he eased the tension between Disney and Pixar. There was a time where Pixar was going to go off on their own, and they were ready to break off until Disney bought Pixar for themselves as the animation studio, and Bob Iger was one of the many people involved in easing that tension and bringing them in. He also oversaw the purchase, of course, of Marvel Entertainment in 2009, and look what that got us. We got the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all these characters, and the big, massive, culture nerd culture revigoration in pop culture, Lucasfilm in 2012, and of course recently the purchase of 20th Century Fox and the launch of Disney Plus. Now originally, and I believe we mentioned this when it first happened, Iger's contract expired in 2018, but he extended it to the following year in 2019 when the company was having trouble finding a worthy successor. Because of that, it led to the Fox deal, and of course, again, the Disney Plus. The news was a bit of a shock. I mean, obviously, it was a big deal when it came out on Tuesday, and we're still probably kind of feeling the effects of it right now. But it was an even bigger shock because, reports came out that Iger's deal, his current deal, his newest deal that he made in 2019, ran through 2021. Now, Iger released a statement saying this, and it was a very, very good statement, saying, quote, with the successful launch of Disney's direct-to-consumer businesses and the integration of 20th Century Fox well underway, I believe this is the optimal time to transition to a new CEO. I have the utmost confidence in Bob and look forward to working closely with him in the next 22 months as he assumes his new role and delves deeper into Disney's multi-factioned global businesses and operations. While I continue to focus on the company's creative endeavors. And that was the sole quote. And of course, the new guy, Bob. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. Bob, I'll just say Chapek. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. So it sounds like Iger will still continue to kind of work with Disney a little bit until the next, until the full transition of power. And it sounds like Iger will still have some creative control over a lot of things, while I'm just going to call him Bob at this point. I don't know his name. I'm just going to call him Bob because I keep mispronouncing his last name. He will take over the more business side of things, which is fine, which is fair. Obviously, you got to, lean someone into it. You got to, work their way around it, teach them the ropes and everything, which is fair. This is a big deal. Like I mentioned, Iger has been with the company for a while, and he's done a lot for him. And for him to finally step down after so long, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously Disney is a well-oiled machine, and Bob Iger, even though he is at the top, he is the CEO of the company. For him to step down and have a new guy come in, there's going to be a transition, and we'll have to wait and see how that works out in the long run. But I think it's still in good hands. I don't think it's gonna be, I don't think Disney's gonna, crash and burn in the next, 22 months after the next 22 months when Iger finally fully leaves. But we'll see. We'll see how this works out. And I felt like this was too big of an item to let go by and not talk about even a little bit. Because like I mentioned, I mean, obviously he's done a lot. Disney Plus is a huge success, and a lot of the things they're doing, they're still rolling out new shows, and, eventually they'll put out some of their own movies. And, the purchase of Fox, which was a big debate, amongst a lot of people, not just movie fans, but TV fans, and even just business in general. Lucasfilm coming into the fold, Marvel coming into the fold, Pixar way back in the day as well. He's just done a lot for Disney, and despite how you feel about Disney and despite how you feel about Bob Iger, I have my own personal thoughts on him as well. He still did a lot for fans and pop culture and stuff like that. So, wishing nothing but Bob Iger the best in whatever he does in the future. I mean, it sounds like he's retiring, but I'm sure he'll find something else. He'll find something new. All right, moving on to the next movie news item. Mission Impossible 7 has halted production due to the coronavirus. Which seems to be everywhere now, and it is a very big deal, so please do not, make joke of it or make light of it at all. Production was set to begin in Venice, Italy, but before they can even start filming, the outbreak had occurred there already with cases. I think it was like somewhere in the 150 range, I think, from what I saw at least in the report that I read. And the government halted all public gatherings. The filming in Italy was supposed to be the first leg of production and was going to last 3 weeks. Paramount Pictures released a statement, and it looked like they halted production altogether, at least from from what we got from that statement. This isn't the first time that Mission Impossible movie, or a Mission Impossible movie, has faced troubled productions. Ghost Protocol famously brought in future writer-director Christopher McQuarrie to extensively rework the script during production, and then when he came in to direct Rogue Nation, he was also a writer-director of that. He wrote and shot the third act of Rogue Nation in the middle of filming. He also reworked the characters and plot during production of the last film, which was Fallout. So it seems like this is just another, bump in the road. And of course, when Tom Cruise got injured as well. So this is just another bump in the road of Mission Impossible movies getting, sidetracked, getting delayed, having a bump in the road along the way. The plan for the series was to shoot the 7th and 8th installment together, but with production halted right now, only time will tell if Part 7 will actually come out on July 23rd of next year. Mission Impossible 8, just to give you a mindset of that, was supposed to come out August 5th, 2022. But of course, health and safety come first, so we'll have to wait and see how long the delay is. Maybe they'll go and shoot it somewhere else, or they'll just have to save that part of filming for the end and then just go and continue filming for whatever else they were going to do. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that and see what that brings. The next movie news item we're going to talk about is a pretty big and exciting one. It's also considered to a movie news item, or connected to a movie news item, that we haven't really talked about on the podcast. I think I just missed it. I think it was just one of those movie news items that I just missed, or it was a weird week. I didn't have a podcast, and it came out then, and I just forgot to mention it for the rest of the podcast. Chris Evans is in talks to join the remake of Little Shop of Horrors, because yes, they are remaking Little Shop of Horrors. Plus, Billy Porter has reportedly also joined the movie. He will voice the man-eating plant Audrey 2. So like I mentioned, the remake has been in the works for a while. I just somehow missed it. So here we are. So for those who are unfamiliar with somehow Little Shop of Horrors, it is a movie based on a 1960s movie directed by Roger Corman, which was then adapted into a very popular stage musical in the 80s. And then it got turned into another movie, a cult classic movie for many, in 1986, which featured Rick Moranis, Ellen Greene, and Steve Martin. The film followed Seymour, who was kind of a loner. He was not loner by choice, but just a loner in general, a life loner. He was a florist, and he becomes a bit of a celebrity when he discovers a very unique Venus flytrap. Eventually, he learns that the plant can actually talk, which he dubs Audrey 2 after his coworker that he's in love with, and demands blood and, of course, eventually people to eat, to maintain, and to get stronger, and eventually he becomes too out of control even for Seymour. Evans, by the way, if he does join the movie, Evans will play Oren, who was the evil dentist, who was human Audrey's boyfriend at the beginning of the movie. He has apparently lobbied for the role very publicly in some places. The role was played by Steve Martin in the movie anyway, not the musical, the movie musical, who did a really amazing job at it. Also, a nice little twist. Evans's father is actually a dentist, so it would be a nice little way to maybe kind of pay respects to his father. Other big names circling the project are Taron Egerton, who is they're looking at to play Seymour, and Scarlett Johansson, who is circling the role of the human Audrey. The movie will be directed by Greg Berlanti, who directed movies like Life as We Know It, which was the movie with Josh Duhamel and Katherine Heigl many, many years ago, where they play new parents. And he also directed the hit comedy Love, Simon last year. And he's also the man pretty much responsible for the Arrowverse on the CW, with shows like Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and any DC comic related thing he's pretty much done. He's also done Doom Patrol and Titans, but he's also responsible for other TV shows like Blind Spot, Sabrina, the one on Netflix, God Friended Me, Riverdale, Prodigal Son, and the other Netflix big series You. Production is expected to start this summer, so we should probably expect to hear confirmations on casting sooner rather than later. It took me quite a while to watch Little Shop of Horrors, the one that everyone pretty much is known with and knows, which is the '86 one, the one with Rick Moranis. It took me a while to watch it, a long time to watch it. I think I watched it I don't even think I watched it until I got to college. So it took me a long time to watch that movie, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's funny. The music is great in it. It still holds up to this day, pretty much. I forgot that Steve Martin was in it. I knew about the movie before I even saw it, but I forgot, or maybe didn't realize that it was actually Steve Martin in the movie. And when I actually just saw it, parts of it very recently, here when I was here at work when I was subbing, teacher. We were in the auditorium for some reason, and the teacher was playing Little Shop of Horrors. So there was that. So I forgot that Steve Martin was in it, and I forgot how much of a dick he is in the movie. But it's so good, and it's so weird seeing him in that kind of role, because obviously we know Steve Martin for like his more comedic stuff, whereas more like straight man sometimes, or the over the top guy. But his role, Orin, was so out there. So I don't know what Chris Evans will bring to Orin if he does get the role, and he probably can get it. He probably he has a lot of power in Hollywood now, so I can only imagine him being able to get it. But this is pretty big. This is pretty cool. I kind of like it. I don't know about the casting of Edgerton. I think I think they're probably trying to get the Rocket Man vibe with him if he gets in it. But I don't know. Maybe go with like an unknown for Seymour, or maybe even maybe not too unknown, because obviously you still want that selling power of it, especially people who don't know about Little Shop of Horrors. But this is interesting. The casting's interesting. We'll see kind of what happens of it, but I'm not against it. Obviously, Little Shop of Horrors itself is a remake, so anyone says, why are they remaking Little Shop of Horrors? It's already a remake. It's like The Thing. People forget The Thing is a remake, or that Scarface is a remake. It's like, why are you remaking that? It's like, well, it's already a remake, so what's the point? Like, you can't get mad at them remaking a remake of a remake. Like, settle down. Okay, moving on to the next movie news item, which is the big movie news item of the week. I've left this for the final tidbit. After many years in development, Steven Spielberg is surprisingly stepping down from directing the long in development Indiana Jones 5. Remember, Spielberg has been the only director for the 4 Indiana Jones movies. That franchise that started 39 years ago, which is very hard to believe that it was 39 years ago, but it has been. However, the project will not be delayed or put on the back burner, at least from the sounds of it. Variety broke the news that Logan and Ford v Ferrari director James Mangold is in talks to take the directing chair. Spielberg will remain on the project, obviously, because, it's his baby, as a hands-on producer, but according to people close to the situation and close to Spielberg himself, the decision to leave was entirely his own, as he wanted to pass along the franchise to a new generation. And Mangold obviously kind of sort of fits that generation. I don't think Spielberg and Mangold's age difference is too much. Harrison Ford still remains attached as the titled character, of course, despite many rumors that Indiana Jones 5 was going to be a remake. It is not. He will come back, and currently has a release date of July 9th, 2021. But of course, with the fact there is no official director attached, there also may be some problems with the script, according to Harrison Ford himself, although he did say that filming was supposed to start in 2 months, and then a couple days later he said, no, there's script problems. So I don't know if maybe he's aware of everything that's going on, but we'll see if that release date sticks. Although if it does, they had to start filming pretty soon, so we'll see how that works out. But this is pretty big as well. Obviously, Spielberg has been attached. I mean, you think of Indiana Jones, you think of Spielberg, and of course, you think of Harrison Ford and the whip and the hat and everything else. But in terms of behind the camera, you always think of Spielberg. And to have Indiana Jones pop up on a big screen or on a poster and not see Spielberg's name under director is going to be a little weird. It is a little weird. But I think if they were gonna get anyone, I think maybe some people would say Mangold. Maybe not a lot of people would say Mangold. I didn't think of Mangold really when I just saw the headline and Steven Spielberg's, stepping down. I didn't, but it cut off right before they said who was going to be the next person, and there's an ambulance. There it goes. No editing. So I didn't really think of Mangold. I was like, who are they going to get to replace him? And I saw Mangold's name on there, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, why not? Why not have Mangold replace him? Obviously, Logan, the Wolverine, 310 to Yuma, Ford v Ferrari. I think Walk the Line was also his. The one with Joaquin Phoenix where he plays Johnny Cash. I think that was his too. He has, the capability to direct a Indiana Jones movie. So, yeah, let him do it. I think this is great. I'm a huge fan of Mangold. I've enjoyed, liked, and loved all his projects that he's done so far. So, let him do it. Yeah, why not? It's going to be, again, a little surprising not seeing Spielberg's name attached to it, especially after being attached to it for so long and after so many years of, yeah, we're going to do it. Oh, we're going to see how we're going to do it. So, this is great. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's all the movie news items that I have so far. At the time of this recording, I'll probably try to release this podcast really early, so this might be the cutoff for it. If it isn't, then I'll put something right here. So there might be just a little bit of editing if I do right here, and if not, then let's move on to this week's movie releases. All right, so let's talk about the limited releases this week. We have quite a few limited releases, which is pretty cool. So we have The Whistlers, which is a foreign movie, and it follows a policeman intent on freeing a crooked businessman from a prison on an island in the Canaries. However, he must first learn the difficult local dialect, a language that includes hissing and spitting. Or spitting. I don't know why I said it that way. Maybe it's the meme that's going around that got to me. But so yeah, this is a foreign movie. It came out last year in some other places and some film festivals, and it got a lot of buzz for it. So be on the lookout for that. It's called The Whistlers. I forgot where it was from, so I apologize for that. I didn't put it down either. The next limited release is Burton. It's the synopsis for it reads like this: when a museum celebrating the Ku Klux Klan opens in South Carolina, in a town in South Carolina, the idealistic Reverend Kennedy strives to keep the peace, even as he urges the group's grand dragon to disavow his racist past. The movie stars Forrest Whitaker, Garrett Hudlin, Andrea Rosenborough, Usher, yes, that one, and Tom Wilkinson. This one's been pushed around release date-wise for a little bit, so I think they finally landed on this one. Very timely, we'll just put it that way. But there's that. The other limited release is Wendy. It is by the director who directed Beast of the Southern Wild. If you remember that movie a handful of years ago, I should say. Lost on a mysterious island where aging and time have come unglued, Wendy must fight to save her family, her freedom, and the joyous spirit of youth from the deadly peril of growing up. Yes, this is a movie about Wendy and Peter Pan. I saw the trailer a while ago when it came out. It doesn't directly say it's a Peter Pan movie. Obviously, it's a movie. It's titled Wendy. It's about Wendy herself. But it's very different. It's not what you expect it to be. I never actually saw Beast of the Southern Wild. I saw just the trailer and stuff, and I saw all the buzz. And it's one of those movies that I've been trying to get to, just haven't gotten to because everything else is kind of getting in the way. But I think seeing the trailers for that, remembering scenes and trailers and stuff like that, and then seeing the trailer for Wendy, it does kind of have that same feel to it. So if you remember watching that and enjoying it, it kind of looks like it's going to have that same feel to it. And finally, the last limited release coming out this week is Guns Akimbo. It is directed by Jason Lee Halden, which we'll get to in a second. And the synopsis reads like this: Miles, a video game developer who inadvertently becomes the next participant in a real-life death match that streams online, while Miles soon excels at running away from everything that won't help him outlast Nyx, the killer at the top of her game. The movie is led by Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Miles, and Samara Weaving, who plays Nyx. Samara Weaving, of course, from Ready or Not, Mayhem, and what's the other one? There was The Babysitter, which is the other one I was thinking about. This one's kind of has a bit of a grime to it now. When I saw the trailer for this, I was hooked immediately, and a lot of people that saw this trailer were hooked on it. And then I think it came out at Fantastic Fest or South by Southwest last year, and it killed it over there. Everyone was really excited for it. The problem with this movie now is that it has a bit of grime to it because of the director, Jason Lee Howden. I think that's how you say his name. He went a bit of a rant on Twitter over the weekend, last weekend, obviously, and talking about some writers of color, and it just didn't really go over well. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but if you want to go look that up, you are more than welcome to. Just know that it's a bit rough, and it's like, why are you doing this? You have a movie coming out. Why are you saying stupid shit like this online? But there you go. So Guns Akimbo, I'm still looking forward to it. I will support Radcliffe, and I will support Samara Weaving, who has become a rising star in Hollywood, but I will not be supporting the director. And finally, the last movie we're going to talk about, the wide release, is, of course, The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannell, who, of course, the last movie he directed was Upgrade. The synopsis reads like so: when Cecilia's abusive ex takes his own life and leaves his fortune, she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences, I can't talk now, turn lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by someone that no one else can see. The film stars Elizabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson, I can't talk now, Oliver Jackson Cohen, Aldous Hodge, Storm Reed, and Harriet Dyer. I had the, as you can probably tell from the sound of my voice, I'm recording this little part a day later because I happen to have already seen The Invisible Man. I saw it last night on Thursday, so this podcast will definitely be going out a little later than usual. But I saw it last night, and I'll give my thoughts on it right now. Spoiler-free thoughts, of course. So not to spoil anything for anyone in case you want to go check it out yourself later, which I highly recommend you do. So a few, I would say cons, but, cons will be in quotation marks. It's not necessarily anything really negative about the movie. I don't have too much to say on the, quote, negative side of it all. It does drag just a tiny bit in some parts. There's no real huge pacing issues in the movie. There are some times where, a lot of things, it's suspenseful. The movie is suspenseful. It is tense. The dread of it all is drawn out. But when those moments happen and then you kind of cut, to the next scene, it kind of just, some of it is just very just drawn out. Like the slow moments are kind of drawn out. So it's a very minor thing, to be honest. And the CGI on something is a little wonky. I won't get more into what it is, but it is a little wonky. You'll know it when you see it. But considering what they were trying to achieve, that was probably the best they can do with their modest budget that they had. So I don't blame them for that. I think, again, it was just something that probably the best they can do with the budget they had, and it still works for a very good majority of the movie. It still works. So it just took me out of it for a second when I saw it. And I'm like, okay, and it happens kind of a little bit every now and then, and it's just it just takes me out for a second, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I can get over that. So again, very minor things, very, 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 very minor things, almost nitpicky things, if you wanna call it that. So let's move on to the pros, there are a lot of them. I mentioned just now the suspense. This movie is suspenseful. It is tense throughout it, and there is dread throughout the movie too. That is cranked up to 11. What Whannell was able to do with the script that he wrote, with the cinematographer in Stefan Desico, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He did the cinematography for Whannell's Upgrade, which he did. And the composer of the movie, Benjamin Wallfish, I think that's how you pronounce his last name as well. He did the score for It and It Chapter 2. He also did some work on Blade Runner 2049. All of that mixed together with the amazing performance, the tremendous performance of Elizabeth Moss, it just makes the movie work so well. When those moments of tension, when those moments of suspense, when those moments of of dread come in every now and then too. Everything blends together so well, and what they were able to accomplish is just it's fantastic. So with the score, it's this very like booming score sometimes, and then it's this very harrowing score and almost haunting score, and it is kind of almost reminiscent of like the older movies. It is kind of reminiscent of the older Universal monster movies. I don't know. I haven't. It's been a while since I've seen the original Invisible Man for quite some time, so I don't know if they took cue. They probably did, but I don't know if they took cues from the original score and put it into the new score. So that's something I'd had to look up, and I didn't look up before I brought it up. But cinematography wise, again, Dusuko, I think that's how you pronounce the last name. I'm not sure. And what we're trying to do, there are multiple moments when the camera is just staring down a hallway, or when it's kind of just like looming around the corner. And the first time that it happens, there's this shot, and it kind of reminded me of Paranormal Activity. I think it was part 3. Was it 3? I think it was 3. Where it's the camera that it just kind of like pans over to the left, and then it pans over to the right, and it's just one of those moments. It happens very, very early in the movie, and my first thought in my head that popped in my head when that happened was, I don't like that, but I don't like that in a good way. That I don't know. They're right from the beginning. They tell you immediately how this movie is going to make you cringe and make you just just dig your nails into your palm, because you're going to be so stressed out at the end of all this. And it's the little things with the cinematography too, and what Winell was trying to do in camera placement. There are things in the background that make it look like something's hanging. Like there are multiple shots of like hanging jackets, but the way like they're set up, it looks like someone can be standing there. There's like things covering sheets a lot of the time, and there's like a lot of dark spaces and shadows whenever Cecilia is around, and whenever pretty much she's by herself. And it's those moments that kind of throw you off, and those moments are just there to throw you off. And in horror movies, especially like this, you're kind of always looking around the corners and seeing what you can see. This is no different. And the thing, I remember saying this when the trailer first came out, was that I felt like the movie was going to be a lot of, the camera just in a room and then just certain things starting to move. And that is the case a lot of the time, but it works. Winell found a way to make it work in the movie. Now, again, everything is connected by Elizabeth Moss, and Elizabeth Moss gives an amazing performance. She keeps the movie together. She keeps the movie going. I could gush like everyone else has been doing for her, but her performance is so damn good in this, and it's almost unfair that how good she is in this movie. But she gives an amazing performance in this, and if anything, if you were going to go watch it, if you're on the fence about it, if anything, go watch it for Moss's performance, because it is good. It's not just good. It's amazing. She knocks it out of the park in this. And of course, the big difference between this and the original Man that I kind of teased out earlier is that the original followed a scientist who turned himself invisible and eventually went crazy and started killing people. Spoiler for like a 50-year-old movie. But this version takes a more modern day approach. It takes an interesting approach, and this is one of the things that made everyone really jump on board with this version of it, is that it follows a woman who's been abused and is in an abusive relationship, and she escapes, only for her to, of course, only for her to find out that her abuser is coming back, and this time is invisible, which I'm pretty sure is an abused victim's worst nightmare. And the movie plays it very, very well. It makes you connect with Cecilia. That's the name of Elizabeth Moss's character. It makes you connect with her in every way possible, and you are with her 100% when things happen to her. You feel for her. You feel sorry for her. There are moments in this movie where absolutely no one believes her, and that's kind of the trope of a lot of horror movies. It's usually like someone knows something's going on and they try to tell people, and especially their most trusted people. People are like, "Oh, I'll believe you. I'm always with you," and then something happens and they're like, "No, you're crazy. So just relax." And there's nothing there. So it is kind of the common trope, but it works even better. and it works for the movie because obviously it's an abusive relationship, and I've never been in an abusive relationship. I've known people who have been in abusive relationships. I have seen what it has done with them, what it has done to them, and it's not easy to watch, and this movie does again a great job of, from at least from the limited experience that I have, obviously again not gone through that, but seeing other people go through that, what this movie does and how it portrays that, it's actually really good. It's actually pretty spot on, again, from the very limited experience that I have. Not personal experience, but again, experience that I've seen. So kudos to Winnell and Moss for putting that together and making it play out, and making this movie not just a sci-fi horror movie, but a horror movie in a whole other way, a real life horror movie. So the miscellaneous things for the movie, there are a handful of jump scares that make this a quote unquote horror movie, which is fine. But in case you were wondering, yes, there are jump scares in it. The supporting cast is pretty good when they're given things to do. Aldous Hodge and Storm Reed play a father and daughter who Cecilia moves in with after she escapes Adrian, and they kind of bring the humor, a lot of times the much needed humor from the movie, considering how serious the movie is and how the places it goes. But they bring the much needed humor to the movie as they can, and of course, as the movie progresses, they start getting into the horror fold. So that's there. Harriet Dyer plays Cecilia's sister named Emily. I do wish that she had a little bit more to do because she is involved in, I would say, some really big scenes involving Moss, especially near the end of the movie, or in the middle of the movie, and then kind of near, no, that's not necessarily, I mean, the middle of the movie. Yeah, the middle of the movie. She's involved in some pretty big scenes, and I kind of wish that they had involved her a little bit more, considering that they are sisters. So I just kind of wanted her a little bit more, but what she's given to do is good. Michael Dorman, who plays the lawyer who we see in the trailer, surprisingly has a lot more to do in the movie. He pops in every now and then on the movie. Obviously, he is the attorney of Adrian's estate. There is a little bit more to his character other than that the trailers don't give away, so I won't give that away either. And finally, Oliver Jackson Cohen's Adrian. He's barely in the movie. I think he probably has like 5 minutes of screen time, if that. So you can see that as a negative or a plus, depending on how you want to view it. Obviously, his presence is still there. His presence is something that haunts Cecilia throughout the movie. But he himself only has like about, I would say probably like about 5 minutes of screen time, which, obviously the movie's not about him, it's about her. So there is that. And then finally, the ending. Now, again, this is spoiler-free, so I won't give away what the ending is. But I feel like the ending of the movie is going to cause some divide with viewers. I know in my theater, when I was walking out, and even when the movie was over and the credits were rolling, I heard some people divided about it in my little, circle of people. And my theater was pretty packed, so there was a lot of, people going in and a lot of different views and stuff. So it should be interesting to see how people take the ending of the movie and how they view it and what they interpret it and what they interpret it as. But the ending of the movie, I think, is going to cause some division, is going to cause some, probably some articles, some opinion pieces, which is fine. And I think that's what the ending is trying to do in a lot of ways as well. So there is that. And there's some good twists in here as well. Obviously, I won't get into them, but there you go. Overall, The Invisible Man is a tension-filled, suspense-ridden story. I had to write this out. I did write this out. It's a tense-filled, suspense-ridden story from someone escaping an abusive relationship, only to be hunted by him both still emotionally and physically in the form of an invisible man. Elizabeth Moss is tremendous in this, yet another great performance by an actress in a horror movie that, some people are already saying will be ignored by the Academy, which is probably true. And with that logic, it's not just, like I mentioned earlier, it's not just a horror movie. It is a horror movie. It is a sci-fi horror movie. It's a man that turns himself invisible and haunts his, girlfriend that he's abused. But it deals with a lot more than that. And it's not a hidden theme. It is right there on the surface. It's not something that's like, oh, it's you deep dive into it and it's actually about this. No, it is right there so you can see what it is, and it works, and it works, and I give kudos to everyone in the movie involved, and they go full on 100% on it. So good for them. So my rating for the movie, I would give it a stamp of approval, which for my new rating system is in the 5 out of 5, 4.5 out of range. So if you wanted the number rating, I'd probably give it a 4.5 out of 5. I wasn't completely I wasn't. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. Don't get me wrong. I did not hate this movie, but I didn't absolutely fall in love with it. It is a very excellent movie. I will give the movie credit with that. But there are certain things that just kind of, again, they weren't pacing issues. There were just moments where they kind of really slowed down. And I don't know. That's just me. It's just me. I still give it a stamp of approval. A 4.5 for me is still a very good rating. But yeah. All right. That's it. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week. It probably will be going out a little later than usual than I would like, just because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going through some computer changes, and my work schedule's a little hectic, and I might be getting home a little later than usual, so there is that. So I apologize for that, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. Anything you need will be down below in the description/show notes area. Links to the trailers, links to my personal media accounts, my personal social media accounts. Also the link to the podcast Twitter as well, which I'm trying to use more. I really am. There's that. What else is down there? Also, I'll put a link down there to a on-set interview from the set of Mulan. There was a on-set video that everyone was all the news outlets were kind of putting out. They discussed a lot of things from, changes they made from the animated movie to the live action movie. Also changes they made from the story that Mulan is based off of, and just a bunch of other stuff that's in there as well. In case you're interested and want your Mulan appetite filled for at least a little bit. So there is that. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I appreciate it. You can go listen to it wherever you want. YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher. There's that ambulance again. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the pod. I'm trying to talk over it. Have a good day, guys.